My name is Marisela Ashlock. I am 54. The stake went into my mother's iris bed at 6:40 in the morning, 4 feet in from the curb, while she watched from her chair at the front window. By noon, a notice was taped over the peephole of my parents' front door. My father is 83. He set glass for 38 years, so he came out with a putty knife. That is the tool for taking something off glass. He brought the right tool, and he could not reach the top corner. My husband's mother was in the passenger seat of the contractor's truck with the window down. She never got out of it. She said the sentence she says, "The board does not make exceptions." I put my gloves in my back pocket, went up the 2 steps, and got the top edge for him. What finally took that notice off the door was a booklet the board hands to every owner who buys in, and it was not anything printed in it. Welcome back to Porch Stories, where the woman with the dirt under her nails turns out to be the only one who ever read the whole page. $200 a day, 112 days, and $15 to write it onto the deed. $22,415 against a house my parents finished paying for in 1994. Hit subscribe if you are staying, because by the end of September, that stake was standing in my parents' garage with a number written down the back of it, and the number was not theirs. And tell me in the comments what your family has decided you are. Mine decided I cut grass. Let me take you back to the April before that, and to a strip of ground 22 feet deep that I had been keeping for 11 years. That April, I was on my knees in wet mulch at the entrance beds with both hands in the ground to the wrist, and a pair of shoes stopped at the edge of the mulch and did not come any closer. They never came any closer. Twice a year, for 11 years, the same shoes at the same edge. The shoes belonged to my husband's mother, Corabelle Ockley, who is 76, and who is the treasurer of the Ravenscroft Common Board of Directors and the chair of its Covenants Committee. She said the Hendersons were unhappy about the ornamental grass. I said I would look at it. Then she told me, the way you pass along a piece of news, that Marin, the oldest owner on Corbin Way, had been written up for a wind chime. I laughed. I thought it was a joke. It was $30. That neighbor is 84, and she has owned that house since 1971. She paid the $30, and she took the chime down. My mother-in-law said what she says. The board does not make exceptions. And then she said the other one. She says it every time, in a pleasant voice, to a woman kneeling in wet mulch. You cut grass. I keep the covenant. And I should say the next part before I say anything else, because leaving it out would be a kind of lying. Corabelle Ockley got me this job. 11 years ago, the association put the grounds contract out for bid, and my husband's mother put my name in the room. She did not ask me first. She told me afterward, at her kitchen table, with her hand flat on the table the way she puts it when she has decided something, she said, "I told them you are cheap, and you show up," which was true, and which was the nicest thing she has ever said to me, and which was also, I understand now, a receipt she intended to hold. That is the job she is describing. I keep the grounds of Ravenscroft Common out in Havering County, and I have kept them for 11 years. I am on my knees for a living. People think that is a sad sentence. It is only a true one. Down at that level, you learn a property the way a nurse learns a hallway, where the water stands, which downspout lies, which corner the plow driver clips every February and never mentions. And you learn where the county stops and the neighborhood starts, because those are 2 different things and only one of them can fine you. On the tailgate behind me that morning, where it rides on every job, was a flat aluminum box about the size of a sheet of paper, with a lid on a hinge and a clasp you have to hit with the heel of your hand. There is a dent in the lid from the year the trailer gate came down on it. It lives on the floor of my truck, on the passenger side, where a purse would go if I carried one. I call it the permit box. When you plant in a county right-of-way, the county gives you a permit with your name on it, and the permit has to be at the work while the work is happening. Not at home, not in a file. At the work. An inspector can pull up beside you at 8 in the morning and ask, "And you had better be able to reach down and put your hand on it." So for 11 years, the permits rode with me. One a year, renewed each March, my own name on every one of them. 11 pieces of paper in an aluminum box. That box ends up open on the treasurer's table in a room with 70 people in it, and I did not know that for another 5 months. The first spring I had that contract, I went downtown to get a copy of the plat. A plat is the map of a subdivision where the lots are, where the streets are, and who the streets belong to, which is not always who mows them. I wanted my own copy because I did not want to put a $500 row of hornbeam in somebody's utility easement. The recorder's office in this county is in the basement of the courthouse. It smells like warm toner and cold stone, which is the smell of a room where nothing is in a hurry. There is a long counter with a hinge-up section at the end. There was a young woman behind it who did not look up when I came in and did not need to. I put the plat down and said I would take a copy. She counted it. And the way she counted it is the reason I am telling you this at all, because she did not count the way you or I count. She put her fingertip on the top corner of the first sheet, then turned it over and put her fingertip on the top corner of the back, then went on to the next one, front, back, all the way through. Then she said, $8. I said there were 4 sheets. She said, 8 sides. And then she said the sentence I have thought about more than any other sentence anybody has ever said to me across a counter. We stamp every side we film. 8 sides, 8 numbers, $8. I paid the $8. I felt cheated by about 4 of them. The way you do. I drove back out to the property, and I put the plat in the permit box, and I went and planted hornbeam, and I did not think about that counter again for 10 years. Her name is Morwenna Quinnell. She is an imaging technician at the county recorder's office, which means she is the person who photographs what people bring in and makes it into a book. I did not know her name that day. I did not know her name for a long time. Now, the booklet. Every October, at the annual meeting, my mother-in-law hands out a green stapled book from a canvas tote she keeps behind her chair. 8 pages, about the size of a church bulletin, enforcement across the top. Every owner who closes on a house here gets one in the packet from the management company. If you lose yours, she will give you another one, and she will let you feel about that exactly the way you would expect. That book is a copy of something. Before there are any houses in a subdivision, whoever builds it records a paper at the courthouse saying what the lots can be used for: fences, paint, sheds, parking, planting. It is called a declaration. Every deed points back to it, so it comes with the house whether you read it or not. Nobody reads it. I had never read it. My parents had not read it since Nixon. What everybody reads is the board's book. Article 9 is the one everybody knows. Article 9 covers front yards, planting, edging, ornament, anything visible from the street, all of it subject to written approval by the Covenants Committee before it goes in the ground. Article 9 is on page 96 of the board's book. Page 96 is the page my mother-in-law quotes. She quoted it at me in her front room in June, and a county officer read it out loud in October, and by October it meant the opposite of what she thought it meant. Now let me tell you about my parents, because they are the whole reason there is a story here, and not just a grievance. My father, Dunstan Ashlock, is 83. He set glass storefronts, school windows, the long panes in the county garage that took 2 men and a suction cup. He has the hands you would expect. He has the habit you would expect, too. He cannot look at a piece of trim without touching it. He cannot walk past a door that sticks without saying he will get to that. My mother, Maudie Ashlock, is 81. Her hands do not do fine work anymore. They do plenty of other work. But threading a needle is done, and so is dividing an iris, which is a thing you do on your knees with a fork and a knife and more patience than I have ever had. They bought the second house on the west side of Alder Row in 1971, when Ravenscroft Common was 2 streets and a field. They paid it off in 1994. My mother came home from the bank that day with the papers in a grocery bag, because she did not have anything better to put them in. My father framed 1 page of it and hung it in the hall. It is still there, crooked, the way it has been crooked for 32 years. The irises are mine. That part I did. 9 years ago, I dug the bed along the front of their house, 9 feet back from the curb. I gave it a shape my mother could see whole from her chair at the front window without turning her neck. She sits in that chair in the mornings. She has coffee at 7, and she looks at that bed. In the second week of May, she calls me and tells me which ones opened, in order, the way a woman reads names off a list. Purple first, then the rust-colored ones, which are her mother's, dug up out of a yard in another county in 1968, and moved 3 times since. The smell of an iris bed in May is green water and pepper. My mother says it smells like her mother's kitchen door. Both of those are true, and they are not the same fact. My husband's mother drove past me the week I put that bed in. She slowed down, and she did not stop. And she said out the window that she did not remember approving it. I said it is my mother's front yard. She drove on. Then nothing, for 9 years. She said it once out a car window in April and never said it again. And that is the part worth stopping on. It was not that she had forgotten. She did not need that bed for 9 years. I married into the Ockley family 29 years ago. My husband is Crispin Ockley. He is a good man in the way a fence is a good fence, which is to say, it holds up fine until something leans on it. He has mowed the front strip at my parents' house with me every April since the year we married. If you had asked me, on any morning of any of those years, whether he would stand next to me, I would have said yes, without thinking. I would have been wrong in a way I could not have guessed. If you have ever done the work in a family or a neighborhood while somebody else decided what the work meant, tell me about it in the comments. I would like to know I am not the only one. And subscribe if you can, because my father did not say one word about any of this from August to October, and then he stood up in a room with 70 people in it, and what he said took about 6 seconds. The gate is where it starts. In the spring, the board decided Ravenscroft Common needed a gate at the Alder Row entrance. Not for crime, there is no crime. For the look of it, and for a line in the newsletter about property values, which is a thing people say to each other here the way other people say, bless you, a gate needs an arm, and an arm needs a control box, and a control box needs power, and power needs a conduit that has to run under something. The cheapest route ran across the side yard of the second house on the west side of Alder Row. My father's house. They sent him a letter asking for a permanent easement. That is a thing you sign that lets somebody else have a piece of your land forever for one purpose. Not rent it, have it. My father sat with that letter for 4 days. Then he did what a man who set glass for 38 years does, which is he wrote back, on paper, in his own hand, and he said no, and he said why. He said the conduit would run 3 feet off the corner of the foundation. He said he had watched the county open that same corner in 1988 for a water line, and he had watched what it did to his basement wall. He said he was sorry, and the answer was no. He drove it to the clubhouse himself and put it in the slot in the door. 11 days later, the first citation came. Article 9. Unapproved planting in a front yard, $200 a day, accruing until the condition was cured. The condition was 140 irises that had been in that ground for 9 years. Hear the shape of that, and not only the fact of it, 11 days, not 11 months. My father declined a request from the board on a Tuesday. On the second Saturday after it, there was a certified letter in his box. It told him he owed $200 for flowers that had been blooming in front of that window since before his granddaughter could drive. I drove over. My mother had the letter on the kitchen table, squared up with the edge. The way she squares things when she has been holding them. She said, "Is it because we said no about the gate?" And I said, "No, Mom. It is probably a paperwork thing, and I will straighten it out this week." That was the last comfortable thing I said in this entire story. Nobody made me say it. I said it because it was easier than the other thing. Straightening it out meant going to my mother-in-law, because straightening anything out in Ravenscroft Common means going to my mother-in-law. She had me in the front room. She has a front room and a back room, and which one you get is the whole conversation. I said the citation had to be an error because the bed had been there 9 years and nobody had ever said a word. She said the bed had never been approved. I said nobody approves an iris bed. She said, Article 9, page 96. She did not raise her voice. If she had raised it, I would have had somewhere to put my hands. She said it the way a woman reads a grocery list. Then she said the other thing, the pleasant one, and she said it while she was walking me to the door. The board does not make exceptions. Here is what accrues at $200 a day. It goes past your ability to feel it in about 9 days. After that, it is just a shape. My parents got a statement on the 1st of the month and another on the 15th. The number on the second one was double the number on the first one. My father put both of them in the drawer under the phone, where he keeps the things he intends to handle. They cured nothing, because there was nothing to cure that they were willing to do. My mother would not take up her mother's irises. She said it once, flat, standing at the sink with her back to me. They were dug out of 1 yard already. On the 112th day, the association recorded a lien against the deed. I did not know what one of those was until it happened to my parents, and I am 54 years old and I keep a business. A lien is a piece of paper filed at the courthouse that attaches to the house itself, not to my father, to the house. It does not care that they never missed a payment. It does not care that the mortgage burned in 94. It sits on the title. Sell that house, borrow against it, or die and leave it to somebody, and the lien gets paid first, out of the top, before $1 reaches a person. It is how a paid-off house gets taken from people who never owed anybody anything. $200 a day, 112 days, and $15 to write it onto the deed. $22,415. My father is 83. He has a pension, Social Security, and about 19 months of margin in an account at the credit union that he calls the roof money, because that is what it is for. $22,415 is not a fine to a man like that. It is his roof and most of a year. And then came the 6th of August. The stake went into my mother's iris bed at 6:40 in the morning, 4 feet in from the curb, while she watched from her chair at the front window. It was a violation placard. Yellow coroplast, the kind political signs are made of, on a wire stake. The contractor who drove it had a magnet on his truck door for a sign company 2 counties over. He did it fast, the way you do a thing when the address is not yours. He put it through the rust-colored ones, my grandmother's. He would not have known that. The cruelty is not in that man's hands, and I am not going to let anybody put it there. By noon, a notice was taped over the peephole of my parents' front door. Not on the door, over the peephole. 2 strips of strapping tape across the top and nothing along the bottom, so the sheet lifted and dropped in the wind like a page somebody keeps turning. The tape went on at the height a man of ordinary height puts a thing he means to be read. That is, 4 inches above where my father can reach. Nobody chose that, and I have had to make my peace with it. The height is not cruelty. The height is a man not thinking about anybody's arms but his own. The peephole is the other thing. There is exactly one place on that door where a piece of paper stops a person from seeing out, and that is where it went. He set glass for 38 years, so he came out with a putty knife. That is the tool for taking something off glass. He brought the right tool, and he could not reach the top corner. I came around the corner of the house with the mower still ticking on the trailer. My father was on his own front step, up on his toes, working the blade at a piece of tape he could just barely touch. I stood there for 1 full second and did nothing. I will have that second for the rest of it. My husband's mother was in the passenger seat of that truck at the curb with the window down. She never got out of it. Not at 6:40 and not at noon. I put my gloves in my back pocket, went up the 2 steps, and got the top edge for him. Then I went down the driveway. She said the board does not make exceptions before I had finished asking the question. Then the man put it in gear, and my husband's mother went up the street with her elbow out the window. Past 40 yards of grass I cut. That night, I sat in my truck in my own driveway, with the dome light on and the permit box open on my knees. I wanted to look at something with my name on it. That was all that was in reach. 11 permits, 11 years, Havering County, Department of Public Works, right-of-way planting permit, issued to Marisela Ashlock, doing business as Ashlock Grounds. And I read the top of one the way you read a thing you have looked past 1,000 times. A right-of-way planting permit is not for a yard. The county does not issue permits for your yard. The county issues permits for county ground. Every one of those 11 permits, every March for 11 years, was for the front strip along the 2 original streets. The strip in front of my parents' house, the strip the iris bed is in. I had been getting a county permit, in my own name, to plant on ground the association was fining my father for planting on. I sat with that for a long time, and then I said a thing out loud in an empty truck that I have said a lot since. A rule is only as long as the page somebody bothered to copy. Now, none of that had occurred to me yet. What I had in that truck was a mismatch and a bad feeling. A mismatch is not proof. A mismatch is a reason to go get paper. So I went and got paper. The first place I went was the management company. It is a 4-person office in a strip mall, between a hearing aid store and a storefront that has been coming soon for 6 years. The bookkeeper there has run the assessment ledger for Ravenscroft Common and 9 other associations for a long time. She has the specific patience of a woman whose whole job is people arriving upset about a number. I had my father write 1 line on a sheet of my legal pad that morning and sign under it. He did not ask me what it was for. That is the only time in this entire story that a thing was easy. I told the bookkeeper what I wanted, and I heard myself hedging while I said it, and she stopped me. She said, "You are a contractor of record for this association, and your father signed a line saying, 'I can hand you his.' Both of those get records. You do not have to talk me into it." That is the first time in 5 months anybody had treated me like a party instead of a complaint, and I had to look at the carpet for a second. She printed the assessment and lien ledger, every charge the association had levied since it went on her system, and the older years on microfilm cards from the box in the back, and she did not charge me for the toner. Then she said one more thing, and she said it looking at the screen and not at me, which is how people give you the real thing. She said, "I have worked 10 of these. Every one of them fines. This one fines like it is a revenue line." I carried all of it out to my truck and put it in the permit box, and the lid would not shut. That is the first time it occurred to me that this had gotten bigger than my father's door. The minutes came next. Board minutes are public to the membership. That is not a favor. It is a requirement, and the management company keeps them in 3-ring binders in a closet that also has the Christmas decorations in it. I sat on a folding chair in that closet for 2 afternoons with a bottle of water and my reading glasses. I found the gate vote. I found the motion to request an easement from the owners at that address. Then I found my father in there, not his name, his letter, entered in the secretary's hand, in the correspondence column, in 4 words, received from owner, declined. A man sits at a kitchen table for 4 days writing a thing out longhand about his basement wall, and it arrives in a binder as 4 words, and I found the next citation issued by the Covenants Committee and the date on it. 11 days between them, 2 different women's handwriting, in a binder that had been sitting in a closet with a plastic wreath. I photographed both pages. My hands were not steady, and the first 2 came out soft. Then I went back 1 binder further, because I had started to want a different thing than the one I came for. 1998, regular meeting, March. Under new business, motion carried that the declaration be reproduced in booklet form for distribution to owners, and that Mrs. Ockley oversee reproduction. That is my mother-in-law, 28 years ago, being handed the one job in this entire association that she wanted. Subscribe if you are staying with me. What that motion turned into is a stapled green booklet, and there is one in a kitchen drawer in every house on these 2 streets. I did not understand what was wrong with it for another 6 weeks. When I did understand it, I was at my mother's kitchen table with a pencil in my hand, doing something else entirely. Here is the paragraph where I am fair to my husband's mother, Corabelle Ockley, and I am not doing it because she earned it. I am doing it because I was there and I know it, and leaving it out would make this easier than it was. She came to Ravenscroft Common in 1974, 24 years old, married to a man who sold farm insurance. Before that, she grew up in a rented house in a different county, and when she was 15, her family was put out of it. I have heard the story twice, both times secondhand, both times from her sister. The landlord had a set of rules. Her mother asked to see them. He would not produce them. He said them out loud, from memory, differently each time. And each time the way he said them, they had already been broken. They packed in November. So my husband's mother learned a thing at 15 that a lot of people never learn at all, which is that the person holding the paper is the person who stays. And she came into a brand new subdivision full of young couples who did not care about paper. She picked up the one thing nobody else wanted to carry. She carried it for 52 years. I know exactly where her rule came from. And here is what I could not get around. On a folding chair in a closet full of Christmas decorations. A woman who was never allowed to see the page had two things she could do about that for the rest of her life. She picked the one where nobody else gets to see it either. That is not the wound speaking. That is a woman who found out what the wound was worth and started charging it. By the middle of September, I had a stack of paper and no shape to it. I had 11 county permits. I had an assessment ledger going back to a microfilm card. I had a minute book with 11 days in it. I had a green booklet with Article 9 on page 96. What I did not have was a reason. Everything in that box said the association had been unfair to my parents. Nothing in it said the association had no right to the ground. And the ground is the only thing that would have mattered, because a board is allowed to be unfair. A board is not allowed to charge you for a piece of land it does not have, and my father had stopped asking me about it, which was worse than when he asked. He had started doing the thing men his age do, which is handling it quietly. I found out because my mother called me on a Thursday and said, in the voice she uses when she is telling on him, that he had been down to the credit union. He had gone in and asked what a payment plan would look like. $22,415 at 83 out of the roof money in installments so that nobody would have to make a fuss. He had written the numbers on the back of an envelope in his shirt pocket. When I picked it up off the counter, he took it out of my hand, not fast. He folded it and put it back in his pocket and said we would talk about it after supper. We did not talk about it after supper. He put the television on. After that night, I was not straightening anything out. I do not have a better sentence for it than that. The next Saturday, I was at their kitchen table with a legal pad, making a replant list. The bed had to be redone before frost. Also, doing something with my hands is how I stop myself from doing something with my mouth. The green booklet was on the table. It had come stapled to the last notice. I picked it up to move it out of my way. I turned it over to see whether the back cover was blank enough to write a list on. It was. I got as far as writing bone meal before I stopped. The page numbers: 88, 90, 92, 94, 96, 98, 100, 102. I looked at that for a while without knowing what I was looking at. The way you look at a word you have spelled correctly your whole life and suddenly cannot. Then I got it. And I got it the way I get everything, which is off the street. 11 years I have driven those two streets, Alder Row and Corbin Way. Odd numbers on the east side, even numbers on the west side. Every street in this country. It is how a man in a truck finds a house he has never been to. There is no such thing as a street with only even numbers on it. If you are looking at nothing but even numbers, you are not looking at a street. You are looking at one side of a street. The board's book has no odd side. I sat there in my mother's kitchen with a pencil in my hand and my heart going. My father was asleep in the front room with the television on, and I heard a woman say a thing to me across a counter downtown 10 years back. We stamp every side we film. I called the recorder's office on Monday when they opened at 8. I told the woman who answered that I needed to know how a book gets numbered. I heard her put her hand over the phone and say something to somebody. Then a different voice came on. It was flat and unbothered, and I knew it in one word. I said, "Is this the one who counts by touching the corners?" She said, "That is a thing my mother did. Her name is Morwenna Quennell. I had been buying copies off her for a decade, and I had never once asked." She said it plainly, and she said it in about the time it takes to say it. "We stamp every side we film. If your book has no odd numbers in it, somebody copied a two-sided document on a one-sided machine, and you have been enforcing half of a page." I said, "Half." She said, "That is what a book is. A book is not sheets, it is sides." And then she said, "Bring me the book and page, and I will pull the film." I drove downtown with the permit box on the seat beside me because I could not think of a reason to leave it in the truck. Ravenscroft Common's declaration is recorded in Book 214 of the Havering County Land Records. It begins at page 88, and it ends at page 103. 8 sheets of paper, 16 numbers. The board's book is 8 pages long, and every number in it is even, and the 8 that are missing are every odd number between 88 and 103. Morwenna Quennell put the certified copy on the counter and turned it toward me and did not say anything, because she is not a person who narrates. I read page 96, Article 9, Front Yards, written approval of the committee. Word for word the same as the green booklet, down to the semicolons, which is how I knew for certain the booklet came off this film and not off somebody's typewriter. Then she turned the sheet over. Page 97 is the back of page 96. It is one sheet of paper, front and back. It has 2 paragraphs on it. The first one is the builder's own exception, in his own words, in the paper he recorded before there was a house on either street. The front 22 feet of every lot on Alder Row and Corbin Way, accepted from every charge, levy, fine, and assessment of the association, without limit of time. The second paragraph is the county engineer's acceptance of that same 22 feet as public right-of-way, signed and dated in 1971. That is the ground the placard went into. That is the ground my mother's irises are in. That is the ground I have held a county permit for, in my own name, every March for 11 years. Article 9 is on the front of one sheet of paper. The thing that cancels it is on the back of the same sheet. I stood at that counter with both hands flat on it. There was nothing clever in me. I asked her, how much? She touched the corners, front and back, 16 times, and she said, $16. 8 sheets, 16 sides, 16 numbers, $16. $16 for the whole rule. The board has half of it. The half they do not have is 8 sides, and a side is $1, and that is the number I cannot get past, $8. Nobody has ever walked in there and spent it. I was putting my copy into the permit box when she said one more thing, and she said it to the counter and not to me. She said her mother bought the 4th house on Corbin Way in 1972, Quennell. The name on the badge I had been reading across that counter for 10 years without once putting it together. Her mother lived in that house until she died, and she kept every paper she ever signed in a glassine folder. When she closed on it, the title company handed her a full copy of the recorded declaration, made downstairs, on the courthouse machine. 2-sided, the way the county films it. All 16 numbers. She brought it in the next morning. In the folder it has been in since 1972. I did not touch it for a second, because it did not seem like mine to touch. Then I did, because that is what it was for. There is one more number, and then I will stop giving you numbers for a while. Ravenscroft Common is 206 lots. 61 of them are on Alder Row and Corbin Way, the 2 streets that were here in 1971. The other 3 sections went up later, with sidewalks and a strip the county never took, and their front yards are their own. So I set those aside. Every Article 9 citation in the newer sections is the association's business, and I did not count a single one of them. I took the assessment ledger from the management company and went through it line by line with a ruler. Every Article 9 penalty the association had levied since the booklet was made in 1998. I did it at my own kitchen table after supper, 4 nights running. By the 4th night, the edge of that ruler had worn a groove across the side of my thumb, and I kept touching it in the truck the next day the way you keep touching a tooth. Then I put each address on the 2 original streets against the plat. I was asking one question of every line. Did the thing they cited stand in the front, 22 feet? Every single one did. 28 years of them. 61 lots. $1,096,428. $8 is what the other 8 sides cost at that counter. $1 a side. Nobody bought them in 28 years. I did not know what to do with a number that big, so I did what my mother does with a thing she cannot put down. I took it out to the garage. The garage smells like cold concrete and 2-cycle gas, which is the smell of every job my father ever meant to finish. The placard was out there, leaned against the wall behind the chest freezer, the wire stake still on it. My mother's soil had dried in a bloom along the bottom of the coroplast. Nobody had wanted to be the one to throw it away. I turned it around and wrote the number down the back of it, with a flat carpenter's pencil off my father's bench. $1,096,428. It took the whole height of the sign. Under it, I wrote the small one, the one I actually cannot get over, and the small one took about an inch. $8. It is still out there. My mother knows it is out there. She has never once gone out to look at it. My father goes out there every day for something. I have never asked him whether he reads it. Before any of the rest of it, I took it to her. That part goes in, because of what my husband's mother said about me later, in a room with 70 people in it. I drove to her house on a Tuesday with the certified copy in the permit box and one of my county permits laid on top of it. Not the ledger, not the minutes, not the 11 days, just the 2 pieces of paper that were about the ground. She had me in the front room. I said the county accepted the front 22 feet in 1971. I said it is in the recorded book. I said I have held a county permit to plant on that strip every March for 11 years. I said I would show her both of them, right there, if she wanted to look. She did not look down at the box. That is the part I keep, not one glance. She had decided what was in it before I got the lid up, and the decision was not about paper. She said, "You cut grass. I keep the covenant." I said, "Corabelle, I am asking you to read 1 page." And my husband's mother said the thing she says to a woman standing in her front room with her father's roof in an aluminum box. The board does not make exceptions. That is the entire reason a county officer ended up reading anything out loud in that clubhouse. I put the page in her hand in her own front room, in private, with nobody watching, and she would not put her eyes on it. A rule is only as long as the page somebody bothered to copy. It is also only as long as the page somebody is willing to be shown. Subscribe before this next part. The woman who found all of this is about to sit in a truck for an hour with a letter she wrote herself and decide not to send it. That hour is the one I would want back if I could only have one. Here is what I could have done. It belongs in this story because I thought about it hard enough to type it. Every deed in Ravenscroft Common points back to that recorded paper. The association has been fining under a document it has not read, and it has been putting liens on houses under it. There is a state real estate division, and it takes complaints. I called the bookkeeper at the management company and asked her what happens when the state gets one about an association's authority to assess. She did not want to answer. Then she did. She said she had watched it happen to an association 2 counties over. The division asked that every deed in that subdivision be flagged while it reviewed. She said flagged means the title company will not write, and if the title company will not write, nothing closes. She said, nothing closed there for 9 months. Then she said, and I could hear her choosing it, that I might want to think about who is under contract in October. I already knew. I plant the beds, and people tell you things while you are on your knees in their mulch. 41 contracts. 2 of them are widows on Corbin Way. both moving to be near daughters, both of them inside 2 months of a truck. That envelope had $1,096,428 behind it and $8 in front of it, and I sat in my truck at the top of Alder Row for an hour deciding whether to lick it. I thought about my mother-in-law's face reading it. I am not going to pretend that part was unpleasant. Then I said it out loud, because saying a thing out loud is how I find out if I believe it. That freezes 41 closings, including 2 widows moving to be near their daughters. I am not fixing my parents' door by locking everybody else's. I did not shred it. I put it in the permit box, and it is still in there, unsigned, with a fold in it. I know exactly where it is, and that is the whole point of not having sent it. There is no version of this where I get to be clean, and also get to say, I was tempted. I was tempted for about an hour. The annual meeting is the 3rd Thursday in October, in the clubhouse, and there are 90 folding chairs, because there have been 90 folding chairs since the clubhouse was built. 2 things about this year's meeting. The board had put a vote on the agenda to raise the Article 9 daily rate from $200 to $250, and the board had invited the county auditor. That was my mother-in-law's idea, and it was, on its own terms, a good one. An association can ask the auditor to certify its assessment role. She sits at the head table and confirms that what the association says it is charging matches what the county has on record. It is the kind of thing a treasurer does in a year when people have started asking questions in the parking lot. The auditor of Havering County is a woman named Rathbone. She has held that office for 9 years. I had never met her. I did not meet her before that meeting either. That is worth saying plainly, because of what my husband's mother said about it afterward. What I did was file a paper. An owner can put a document into the record of the annual meeting before a vote that relies on it. You file it with the secretary. There is a form, and it is 1 page, and I filled it out on the hood of my truck. What I asked for was that the county's copy of Book 214 be entered and read out before anybody voted on the fine schedule, 88 through 103. All 16 sides. I filed it 11 days ahead of the meeting. That was not on purpose. I did not notice it until my father put his finger on the 2 dates on the kitchen table and did not say anything at all. 3 days before the meeting, they cited my parents again. This time I was there when it went up. I was 2 houses down with the trailer still hitched, edging a bed, and I watched a man in a windbreaker walk up my parents' steps with a roll of tape in his hand, put a sheet of paper across the peephole, and come back down. He was not unkind about it. He said good morning to me on his way past. By the time I got there, my father had the storm door propped with his hip and the putty knife out of the kitchen drawer, and he was up on his toes again. He brought the right tool, and he could not reach the top corner. I did not take it down this time. I took a photograph of it, from the sidewalk, with my father in it, and then I took it down. My mother was in the chair at the front window with her hand up flat against the glass, not waving, just flat against it, the way you do when you cannot get out there fast enough to be any use. That is the picture I would show you, if this were the kind of story where I show you a picture. I told my husband that night, all of it, the 11 days, the booklet, the 16 numbers, the 22 feet, the million. My husband listened the whole way through without interrupting, which he is good at. When I finished, he was quiet for a while. Then he said the thing that ended a piece of my marriage, without ending my marriage. He said, "She's 76, Marisela. Pay the $22,000 and let her keep her table." I asked him with whose money. He said we would find it. I said, "That money is my father's roof." And my husband said, "I know." Then he went and did the dishes, which in this family is a whole sentence. He was not defending the fine. He knew the fine was garbage. He had helped me mow that strip for 29 years. What he was defending was a woman at a table in a room, and he had finished that arithmetic before I opened my mouth. The clubhouse smells like coffee urn and carpet glue, and in October, wet coats. They set out the 90 chairs, about 70 of them filled, which is high. Word travels here the way it travels anywhere, which is imperfectly and fast. My mother-in-law was at the head table with the canvas tote behind her chair. The county auditor was at the head table too, down at the end, with a folder in front of her and her hands on top of it. She had the particular stillness of a public official who intends to be finished by 8:30. On the table between them, because the secretary had entered it that afternoon, was the certified copy of Book 214. It has a blue paper cover with the county seal embossed through it. It does not look like much. My father sat in the fourth row on the aisle with his hat on his knee. My mother sat next to him. I had told them they did not have to come, and my mother had looked at me as though I had offered to carry her. I sat behind them with the permit box on my lap. Marin, the oldest owner on Corbin Way, was at the back by the coffee, where she always is. The woman who paid $30 for a wind chime does not sit at meetings sitting down and getting up again is the part she does not care to be watched doing, and she has stood at the back of every one of these for as long as I have been coming. The agenda ran the way agendas run: reserve study, the gate, tabled, landscape contract, which is me, renewed without comment by a room full of people who were not there for that. Then the Article 9 schedule. My mother-in-law read the proposed increase from 200 to 250 and said what she says at meetings, which is a longer version of what she says everywhere. Enforcement is the only thing that protects the value of your home. The board does not make exceptions. And a man 3 rows up said it back to her, agreeably. The way you repeat a thing you have heard so many times it has stopped being anybody's sentence, he said. They don't make exceptions. And 2 people laughed, comfortably, and I sat there and understood that I was watching a sentence that had gotten loose and gone to live in other people's mouths. Then the secretary said there was a document entered before the vote. The auditor opened her folder. I did not stand up. I did not read anything out loud. I have thought a great deal about why I did not. The honest answer is that nothing I said in that room was going to be worth what it cost, and everything she said was free. The auditor of Havering County put on her glasses and picked up the certified copy. She said she would read the pages entered, beginning at page 96, the one the board's own booklet reproduces. She read Article 9, word for word. It took about 40 seconds. It was, I promise you, the most boring thing that has ever happened in that clubhouse. Every person in that room had heard it before, or thought they had. Then she turned the sheet over. She said, page 97, and she read the declarant's exception. The front 22 feet of every lot on the 2 original streets, accepted from every charge, levy, fine, and assessment of the association, without limit of time. And then she read the county engineer's acceptance of that 22 feet, and the date, 1971. A man on the aisle in the 3rd row said that was 55 years ago. He said the county had never once come out and done anything with that strip, and that everybody in the room had been mowing it their whole lives. That is a fair question, and I want to say so. It is the question I would have asked. The auditor said a dedication does not lapse because nobody visits it. Then she asked the room whether anybody had a county paper for that ground, anything with the county's name on it, anything current. I did not say a word. I stood up, set the permit box open on the treasurer's table, and sat back down. She turned it toward herself and took the top one out. She read the head of it out loud. Havering County, Department of Public Works, right-of-way planting permit, issued to Marisela Ashlock, doing business as Ashlock Grounds, March of this year. Then she went through the rest with her thumb and said there were 11 of them, 1 for every March, and that the county had been licensing a woman to plant on that strip for 11 years, the same woman the association pays to mow it. In 11 years, not one person on that board had asked me what the county handed me every spring. And then she did a thing I had not asked for and would not have thought of, because it is not the kind of thing a woman like me thinks of. She turned to the assessment roll, the one she had come to certify, the one the association had handed her that afternoon. She said the roll in front of her carried Article 9 penalties going back to 1998, and she read the association's own total off the association's own page, $1,096,428. Somebody 2 rows behind me said that number again out loud and got it wrong. Somebody next to him corrected him. The two of them argued about it in a whisper, while a public official waited. The auditor said she could not certify a roll that included charges levied on ground the county accepted as public right-of-way in 1971. She said she would be putting that in writing. Then she took her glasses off, which is how you know an official is done. Nobody said anything for about 4 seconds. Then the oldest owner on Corbin Way came up the aisle. She did not stand up out of a chair, because she had not been sitting in one. She came up the middle with her coffee still in her hand. She set the coffee down on the treasurer's table. She put her hand flat on the blue cover of that certified copy, and she said it to the auditor, not to the board. I bought here in 1971, and I have never once heard that page. Would you read the 22 feet again? And the auditor read it again. Then my father stood up. He is 83, and he does not like a room. He put his hat on the seat, and he held the chair in front of him, and he did not turn around to look at anybody, because he was not talking to the room. He was talking to the woman with the county's copy in her hands. He said, I told this board no about the gate on a Tuesday. The first paper came 11 days later. I would like that in the minutes. Then he sat down. The secretary wrote it. I watched her hand move. That is the only thing anybody in my family asked for the entire fall. It took about 6 seconds, and it is in a binder in a closet with the Christmas decorations. My mother-in-law had not moved. Her hands were on the table in front of her, and she had a pen in one of them, and she had not written anything. When she did speak, she did not speak to the room. She turned her head, and she spoke to me, 4 rows back, in a voice that carried exactly as far as she wanted it to. She said, You brought a county officer into a neighborhood meeting to embarrass your husband's mother in front of her friends. I let that sit. In the truck afterward, I invented 6 answers to it. Every one of them was worse than the silence. That sentence has no 83-year-old man in it. It has no doorway, no packing tape, no putty knife. It has a room, and it has her in it, and everybody else in it is furniture. There was nothing to argue with, because there was nothing in it that was about what happened. What I said instead was the only thing I said out loud in that building all night. I said it quietly. I said it to her, because she had spoken to me. I said, You kept the covenant, Cora Bell. You kept 8 pages of it. Then I went up to the treasurer's table, where my box had been sitting open this whole time, and I took the glassine folder out of it and handed it across to her myself. She took it. A woman raised the way she was raised does not refuse a paper somebody hands her. A closing packet from 1972. Both sides of every sheet, the way the county films it. I said, One more thing, and it is not mine. That belongs to the daughter of the woman who bought the 4th house on Corbin Way, and she wants it back. The vote on the Article 9 increase did not happen. The chair did not call it. There is no motion in the minutes to withdraw it. It simply did not get called, and the secretary wrote the next item. And that is what it looks like when a thing dies in a room full of people. Here is what happened after, and none of it is dramatic, which is how you know it will hold. The county auditor put it in writing 8 days later. She declined to certify the assessment roll, and she copied the county engineer, because the acceptance of that right-of-way in 1971 is the engineer's file and not hers. The association's own lawyer, not mine, theirs, hired by the board, paid out of dues my parents have paid since Nixon wrote an opinion letter in November that said what page 97 says. He used 40 times the words. The board voted to release the lien on my parents' house at a special meeting that lasted 19 minutes. $22,415, gone off a deed in under 20 minutes, by the same kind of vote that took $15 to put it on. The release is filed. It will be on that title forever, right underneath the lien, in the same courthouse, in the same kind of book, filmed on both sides. My parents own a house whose record now contains a paragraph about a thing that never should have been written down. That does not come off. Nobody is putting it back the way it was. The refunds are a schedule. 28 years of Article 9 penalties on 61 lots, calculated to the dollar by the management company at the association's expense, $1,096,428. And $8 is what it would have cost to know. The schedule exists. It has not been mailed. There is an argument going on about the reserve fund, and there will be one for 2 more years. I am not in it, and I am not going to be in it. My mother-in-law is not the treasurer. She resigned the treasurer's seat in December. She kept her seat on the board, which she is entitled to. She is not the chair of the Covenants Committee anymore, because there is no committee of the kind she chaired. It was dissolved and rebuilt with 3 members and 1 rule. The recorded declaration is the document, and no reproduction of it is. She hands out nothing at the annual meeting now. The canvas tote is not behind her chair. She has not apologized. I did not get one, and I am not going to get one, and I have stopped constructing the sentence in my head where she does. That construction was costing me about 2 evenings a month. My husband mows the strip with me in April. We are being paid down, my husband and I, slowly, in the way a thing gets paid down when both parties keep making payments and neither one says the word. That is not a happy ending, and it is not a sad one. It is a Tuesday. Morwenna Quinnell has her mother's closing packet back, in its glassine folder. She keeps it at the office now, instead of at home, in the drawer where the office keeps its exemplars. She showed me the drawer. There is a corrected copy of the whole declaration in a binder bolted to the wall in the clubhouse, all 16 pages. The county's own certified copy is what the board reads from now. It cost the association $16, and the last thing? My father took the tapering off the peephole himself in November. It had been there since August. 2 gray stripes of strapping tape glue, 4 inches above his reach. He would not let me do it, and he would not let my husband do it. He carried a milk crate out of the garage and turned it over. He stepped up on it, 1 step. My mother watched from the chair. I did not offer a hand. That was the hardest thing I did all fall. Then he worked that adhesive off the glass with the putty knife, the way he had done it on 10,000 storefronts. It took about 90 seconds. He did not scratch anything. Then he put the putty knife in the kitchen drawer, where it lives, and where it has stayed, because there has not been anything else stuck to that door. The irises are back in. I put 140 rhizomes in that bed the first week of November. 9 feet back from the curb, inside the county's 22 feet, with a permit in my own name in an aluminum box on the floor of my truck. The rust-colored ones came through. Iris are hard to kill. That is why women give them to their daughters. Now, on the 2nd Saturday of every month, my father and I take the wheelbarrow down the front strip of Alder Row and do whatever the month is asking for. Bulbs, cutting back, mulch, nothing. Some months it is nothing and we go anyway. It started with 2 of us. In April it was 5, and Marin, the oldest owner on the street, brings coffee out to the curb in a thermos and stands, because standing is what she does. Nobody voted on it, nobody approved it. It is happening on county ground. A rule is only as long as the page somebody bothered to copy. That is the whole thing, and you can put it on a card if you want it. That's my story. 11 permits in an aluminum box, 1 sheet of paper with a front and a back, and an 83-year-old man on a milk crate with the right tool in his hand. So here is your 10-minute thing, and I mean it, and I am not selling anything. If you live under a homeowners association, do not read the booklet they gave you. Go to your county recorder and ask for the recorded declaration for your subdivision by book and page. Ask what page it starts on and what page it ends on. Then count the sheets in your hand and count the numbers on them. If there is an even number on every page and no odd one anywhere, you are holding half of your own rules. Then find the page that is the back of the page they quote at you. Mine was page 97. The whole thing cost me $16, at $1 a side. The half nobody in my neighborhood had ever bought cost $8. Share this with the woman whose parents got a letter from a board that has never read its own founding page. She is out there tonight with a certified envelope on a kitchen table, squared up with the edge, and she thinks it is a paperwork thing. And tell me in the comments what your family or your board has decided about you, what they have decided you are for. I read them. I am usually on my knees somewhere with my phone in a bag of mulch, but I read them. Hit subscribe if you want the ones like this, where nobody gets arrested and nobody gets rich and a piece of paper turns over. That's all of it. Thank you for sitting with me on the porch tonight. I'll see you in the next one.